Actually, it's a very nice question. In fact, I'm extremely delighted to listen to Dr. Vora. I believe we have some blood relation because when she was in Manitoba, I was in Saskatchewan, and then in Newfoundland. So we have the bit of Canadian blood in us. So it's an honor meeting you, ma'am. And you articulated it so nicely. The one thing I can tell, even in US, my wife actually graduated from a US university, Western Michigan, in computer engineering. And when I went there to scope out if it's a good place for her to do a grad school, well, it was closer to where I used to live in US. To my surprise, the entire computer science and computer engineering, they were filled with Indian students, 100%, not a single American student. So what the first realization that I had was that the commoditization of engineering has gone all the way to United States. And essentially, you pay the fees, you get a seat, you do your grad school, and then most of them don't do a PhD, they get into the workforce. So the commoditization of education is an enemy of entrepreneurship, actually, because now I will come back to the specific question that you have asked. I have a few points which I will quickly make with due respect to the other speakers who would also have to enlighten us. When you look at the Indian psyche, the ethos, it is actually built for entrepreneurship because we developed as a skill-based society. In the sense, it is not very appropriate for me, I have to articulate it very carefully. But you had this hereditary skills passed down across generations. That is why we have been able to build this wonderful, temples and monuments and forts that have outlasted mere mortal existence by being, standing the test of time for generations. We knew how to make Panchaloka idols. We had fantastic, Damascus sword is actually a scheme from India. And you had all these artisans and the people who are showing the way of the world until industrialization came, where the skill-based, industry got completely decimated. And therefore, we started losing our traditional entrepreneurial zeal that was built in our DNA. But when industrialization took over, naturally the wealth started getting accumulated in the West. And two things forced them. Necessity is the mother of invention. The Second World War did not make life easier for them, and they have to be on their feet, because it was a question of survival between the Allied and the Axis forces. So there was a forced industrialization thrust upon them. And after the Second World War, America started to grow very strongly, simply because they were able to buy out a lot of skills, especially the people after Second World War who wanted a place to stay and flourish. They felt US was a better place. And second is, demographically, US is ensconced between Mexico, which is a fairly innocent country, and also Canada, which was equally innocent. And then you had the Pacific Ocean on one side and the Atlantic Ocean on the other side, which made very, very, ensconced in a very secure shell. They did not have any geographic threat or anything like that. And of course, they had a very large country, they had a lot of natural resources, so they were able to grow very quickly. And naturally, after the Second World War, Japan was protected by United States. But when you look at the mindset, the American mindset is one where failure is okay. I got fired from a job, big deal, I will go for another job. So the society itself was pretty okay with risk-taking, and it was very conducive. The American value systems favored failure. And even Goodyear went to jail 2 times before his name was etched in the history for vulcanization. And Steve Jobs was a dropout. There was no taboo attached with, I think Professor Vora made a wonderful statement that the highest employable person is an uneducated woman. A very, very poignant statement she made. See, we are actually too much pegged on formal academic education, and we have ended up substituting quantity for quality. The second thing in an Indian psyche is, with a population of 1.4 billion, education offers some kind of a safety net. Entrepreneurship becomes a gamble. Is it worthwhile trying out something and failing, where I would be reckoned as a failure in the society? This is one thing. The third thing is, when you look at even entrepreneurship, it starts with internship. If you take Tamil Nadu itself, there are 600 engineering colleges. And from third year and fourth year, if you have to do some kind of internship with some industry, you are looking at least 1 lakh to 1.2 lakh students to be accommodated in medium and small scale industry or in a large company. And that's too much. The industries are not large enough to accommodate so many number of people. Of course, when you start some kind of an industry in India, you have to face the bureaucracy and the corruption. And naturally, with all the policies, merit has taken a back seat. The other thing, I don't know whether it is good or bad. Once the economy was opened up in India, I could even see people aspiring for IAS, even people with IIT degrees, getting into information technology, because going abroad became one of the big things, on-site placement and all that. And therefore, the mindset became a service-oriented mindset than pushing the frontier. If you look at today, I think at least around 50% of our GDP is from engineering service industry and BPO and all that. So I'm sorry to say this, but this is a coolie mentality, not the risk-taking mentality. Still, with all the IT, everything, we have not produced a good operating system or a good device driver or whatever it is. And still, when you talk about operating system, it is Microsoft. If you look at any engineering software, it either comes from Western Europe or from Japan or from America. That's an undeniable truth. Therefore, another thing is, even in the United States, the AT&T Bell Lab, which made all the C language and the transistor and all that, was broken. Today, it's a telephone company. AT&T means it's a telephone company. It's not the once glorified innovation company. So when the mindset is going from a technology-oriented, technology-driven kind of an industry to an investor-driven, to a street-driven, like Wall Street, Dalal Street and all that, you become very speculative and you want to excite the community, you want to be in the news. Otherwise, your share value will go down. Therefore, the entire industry is not introspective anymore. It is very prospective. And that, I believe, is not giving a very robust foundation for entrepreneurship. Having said that, these large companies are also many times not taking the risk, and they are telling, let the startups take the risk, and if they succeed, let us buy them out. Therefore, again, just like you put money in the share market, you are also wagering on the thought capital of people. And I don't know whether it is good or bad. The last thing I wanted to tell is also that, when our grandfathers got the Murphy radio, it was on the center of the living room, and during Ayuda Puja, you would put a pottu on that. It was also revered as one of the deities, and only the grandfather can touch it, nobody else can touch it. But today, things are built for obsolescence. So the whole thing is, we are moving from an asset-based model, that is a capex-based model, to an opex-based model where you are actually building for obsolescence, and there is no worker loyalty because you are moving to a contract-based model. You don't want to build your own place because you can rent it. So that you want a very elastic models rather than sustainable long-term mindset. So what is happening is, there are certain, in the masquerading as agility, you have built in certain mindsets. I don't know whether it is good or bad for entrepreneurship, but to sum it up, if India would have to look at entrepreneurship, we need to tie in with what our culture is, what the foundations of India is, and not ape the West, because the West looks at us as a low-cost service provider and not as a thought capital. Which means when you start asserting yourself as a nation with a lot of thought capital, you suddenly become isolated. That is where I think we have to come up with the mindset of service orientation if we want to come into creators of knowledge capital and knowledge wealth. So this is my few cents worth, Mr. Raghavan. Thank you.